Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Dr. Nick. Today we're going to go all the way back in time to the year 1989. Remember this? The Sega Genesis, which came out in 1989 and was the predecessor to the Sega Master System. This was a 16-bit system, cartridge-based, of course, and this one was the Model 1, and it actually had a volume control and a headphones jack and the on and off switch, which is right here. And then on the back it had a AV out and an adapter that you can still hook up to basically any TV, even a HD TV, with the coaxials. To me, this is one of my favorite systems due to the fact that I grew up with it, and this was actually our second system, I believe. The very first one, of course, was the Nintendo, which we got for Christmas one year, I believe. And this one, most people who were my age had the Super Nintendo. We had the Sega Genesis. Now, what was really interesting about the Sega Genesis was the fact that it had a lot of games that Super Nintendo necessarily didn't have. They had the 16-bit graphics just like the Super Nintendo, but they had exclusive games. For instance, you couldn't get Streets of Rage for the Super Nintendo. You couldn't play Sonic. So, that basically it was the console wars of the 1990s, and that was Sega versus Nintendo. And there was some, fighting back and forth, jabs with commercials. Nintendo don't, Sega does, whatever. But to me it was really cool because it put both companies on their toes to create unique and fun games. Now, I prefer the Model 1. I also have the Model 2, which is a smaller version, which, still had the cartridge on the top, but it was just smaller. And then, of course, they had the Model 3, which I do not have. The Model 3 is about that big. It was put out by a company named Majesco in 1993 under the Sega licensing. It's a pretty cool system. I've seen them out in the wild. I just don't really have, any inkling to pick them up. Here's some of the games that I've picked up over the years. Some of my favorites. These are just some of them. I obviously couldn't bring all of them up into my man cave. A lot of them were upstairs, the boxed games and stuff like that. But here's some of my favorites. RoboCop vs. Terminator. Streets of Rage, and there was 3 of these. These are really fun games. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And then, of course, what's a Sega Genesis without Mortal Kombat? We all remember the controversy with Mortal Kombat. Rocket Knight Adventures. Power Rangers, the movie. WWF Monday Night Raw. WWF Royal Rumble. And Rambo 3. And you might remember this from the arcade. Lethal Enforcers, which they also had the light guns from the arcade that you could plug into your Sega Genesis, which I thought was kind of cool. I do have one. I didn't bring it with me into my man cave. But the main thing I want to talk about the Sega Genesis is the fact that these just, with any systems, especially the older ones, to me these things were made so much better. I mean, yeah, they're made out of plastic, but the parts in them are just amazing. I mean, this thing is, not really ancient, I won't say ancient, but these systems were made to last, as opposed to, an Xbox 360 who, basically the thing breaks after having it for less than a year. I don't know. They just made things a lot better. And then, of course, I almost forgot, this right here is the expansion that you could put the Sega CD on. I do not have a Sega CD, and also I do not have the 32X adapter, which I might pick it up eventually to put it in my collection, but it's not something I really need because they didn't really put out a lot of 32X games. The 32X was an attachment that, would go into the cartridge port, and it was huge. It even had its own power supply that you'd have to plug into the back of the Sega, and it was just a big mess. I mean, they tried to extend the life of the Sega Genesis is what they were trying to do. Unfortunately, Sega, their last system that they made was the Sega Dreamcast, and to me it was a very underrated, console, but that's besides the point. But Sega, to me, will always have a huge part of nostalgia in my childhood. It will always mean a lot to me. This is actually the Sega Genesis that I had for when I was younger. This is the exact system, which to me, this means a lot to me to have this. To still have this after all these years is great. I cherish my game systems, all my games. I mean, to a lot of people, video games are just something to play around with on occasion, and, it's okay, but to me it means a lot. It brings back a part of my childhood that just makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside, it makes you feel good. Everybody has that TV show, book, comic, toy, something that reminds them of a warmer, better time in their life to back, before work and stuff like that. And that's what I like to do. I like to have fun on the show and share memories and things like that. And I hope everybody has enjoyed the previous episodes. This is the first episode that I've done about video games. If you'd like to see more, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. I'd like to give a shout out to a couple of channels, Loch Ness Monster and Retro Budget 20. I will put the links below into their channels, below in the description. But this has been another episode of Dr. Nick's Time Machine, and I see y'all later.